Have you ever noticed how everything looks the same these days? I drove through a new housing development recently, and all the houses look just the same. Little houses on small plots. They all have the same garage door, same colors, same little postage stamp lawn, same fake pillars for the porch. It's all the same. Or cars. You look at cars today, they all look the same. There's only three colors. There's gray, black, and white. And interior decoration. Everything is shades of gray and brown these days. We're lucky that we live in Hoodsport, but every suburb in America has the same retail outlets with the same architecture. Every interstate exit looks the same. You can get the exact same cup of coffee in Starbucks in any city, in any state, in the whole country. Same. As an artist, I find it distressing. I want visual variety. I want change and contradiction and creativity. I want to see things out of place and out of order. And that's what makes a good painting. But everything's the same. I don't know why everything has to look the same. Well, in today's gospel story, Jesus tells a parable about sameness. He says a landowner sowed good wheat seed in his field, but when it came up, there were weeds in the wheat. And the man's servants who had planted the wheat were upset. They came to him and said, Master, where did these weeds come from? We didn't plant them. We don't know how they came up among this good wheat. There's nothing that's supposed to be there but a field of pure wheat. And the owner says, well, don't worry. Just let the seeds grow, or the weeds grow along with the wheat, and we'll sort them out at the harvest. But the workers are worried. They say, no, we've got to get rid of those weeds. The owner says, no, don't worry. If you pull them up now, then you pull up the wheat too. We'll just let it go until the harvest. See, the workers want everything to be perfect. They want it to be one big field of pure wheat. But the owner doesn't have any problem with the mixed plants. So what if there are some weeds? I mean, who knows? Maybe some of those weeds aren't really weeds. Maybe they're actually companion plants that help the wheat grow better. Everything doesn't have to be the same. In Katie's garden, she plants leeks along with the strawberries because the leeks help the snails go away. The snails don't come when there's leeks. And the Native Americans knew that corn and beans and squash worked together better when they were planted together instead of separate. So maybe the landowner in this parable knows something that the workers don't know. Monoculture isn't actually that efficient. Modern agribusiness plants these enormous fields of genetically modified seeds so that they can have these perfect industrial rows of corn or wheat. But there's no diversity. There's no alternatives. See, the owner in the parable, he's okay with diversity and unity. He doesn't have to have everything be the same. Now, Matthew wrote this gospel probably 40 or 50 years after the death and resurrection of Jesus. And it may well be that Matthew included this parable in his gospel because the early church was experiencing difficulty was experiencing diversity among its members. The church had grown and more people had joined, and some of these new people weren't as committed or as knowledgeable about the church as the original members. You might say they were weeds. And so the original members said, everybody should be like us. Everybody should be as dedicated as us, as pure as us. We are the pure church. So we should get rid of these newcomers, these imposters. But Matthew said, no, remember what Jesus said in the parable of the weeds and the wheat. The church needs all kinds of people. The church is not meant to be a little chapel of perfect people. If it was, the church would have disappeared a long time ago. The church is meant to be this rich mixture of sinners and saints and misfits and oddballs and the devoted and the devout, optimists and curmudgeons. In other words, just like us. It takes all kinds. I don't know why some people have a problem with that. Some people seem to want uniformity. They want to have orderliness, symmetry, regularity. It makes them feel, I think, like the world can be kept in order that way. Makes them feel like they're in control, I think. So they learn to conform. Don't make mistakes. Don't stand out. Don't show imperfection. Don't reveal your vulnerabilities. And that way life is pure, life is clean. And just act like everybody else. And that pretty well describes, I think, the Pharisees in Jesus' time. They thought that if they just did everything right, if they kept themselves pure, if they followed all the rules, then they'd be righteous. Jesus did just the opposite. He associated with sinners. He rubbed elbows with the crowds. He touched the lepers and healed them. He ate with tax collectors and sinners. His life was the very definition of diversity. There are weeds in the wheat. Don't worry. There are sinners in the church. Don't worry. There are different opinions among the people. Don't worry. God's field is not perfect rows of pure wheat, but it's all kinds of plants growing side by side. So what Jesus is saying, I think, is show a little tolerance for people who aren't like you. Don't be so quick to judge others. Not everybody has to be just like you. That person that you think is a weed might be the most important plant in the field. In 1859, John Stuart Mill gave an argument in favor of tolerance. He said, we ought to tolerate other opinions. First, we might be wrong. And second, the other person that we disagree with might have a portion of the truth that we can learn from. And third, we don't know if our ideas have been tested until we're able to come up against people with different opinions. So diversity and tolerance is a good thing for everybody. Everybody's better off when we're a tolerant society. Jesus told the parable about the wheat and the weeds because he knew how important weeds are. We need the weeds. The military forces in the United States are the most effective fighting force in the world because of this diversity. From the time you start basic training, it's drilled into you that your squad, your unit is going to take care of you. It doesn't matter whether they're black or white or brown or gay or trans. You depend on them and they depend on you. So when you're under fire, you're a unit together. Same thing in the workforce. A team that includes diversity is going to be more effective. You're going to have a wider variety of ideas, more innovation, more testing and refining and a wider perspective than if you just have a team made up with all the same kind of people. Same thing in the church. We're all better off if we have variety. There's a sign at the bottom of the driveway that says, love everybody, and Jesus will sort it out in the end. I think that's a pretty good encapsulation of today's parable. There's a story about a man who dies and goes to heaven. And St. Peter meets him and says, welcome to heaven, let me give you a tour. So they go through heaven, and it's a long hallway with doors and big rooms off to the side, and they pass the first door, and there's people singing at the top of their voices, and St. Peter says, oh, that's the Methodists, they love to sing. And they go by another door, and there's people who are just speaking in tongues and having a great time, and Peter says, oh, that's the Charismatics. And they go by another door, and there's a bunch of people who are arguing. And St. Peter tiptoes by the door, and the man says, who are they in there? And St. Peter says, shh, it's the fundamentalists. Don't disturb them because they think they're the only ones here. So let the weeds in. Let's all grow together.